The injuries he got on the job made him hit his wife. That's the claim of one retired NFL player accused of assault. Now a judge is set to decide if doctors will be able to evaluate Corwin Brown's mental status. Rick Folbaum has more on this potentially groundbreaking case. Rick?
Well, John, 41-year-old former NFL and college football star Corwin Brown stands accused of holding his wife Melissa hostage inside their Indiana home for 7 hours before eventually shooting himself in the stomach and surrendering to police. That was in August. His wife is okay and Brown survived, but it's his defense that's getting a lot of attention. He claims that brain injuries that he sustained while playing football are to blame for his behavior now. Call it the football defense. The Brown family believes that he suffers from brain trauma, the same injury that apparently led two former NFL players to eventually commit suicide. According to his attorney, Corwin Brown has been receiving treatment for a brain injury. The judge has set a hearing date of January 11th, John, when the defense team will have to provide prosecutors with a list of doctors who they would like to evaluate Corwin Brown. Back to you.
And they're looking for doctors from outside the area, isn't that right?
That's right. They're looking for doctors who would be impartial and who could come in and do a fair evaluation of Corwin Brown's mental state.
All right, Rick, thank you. That kind of excuse might seem a little crazy, and that's no pun intended, but apparently people have used the same defense in the past, from football injuries to motorcycle accidents or even PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Brain injuries can play a major role in all kinds of criminal cases. Will any of that, though, help Brown's defense? With us now, criminal defense attorney Dwayne Cates, along with former prosecutor Tad Nelson. There is something called chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, that comes from repeated blows to the head. Dwayne, can it make you into a violent person? That's really the question to be decided here, right?
It is the question, and I'll tell you what, his symptoms, what they described happened that day, fits the symptoms of CTE exactly. It's anger, it's aggression, it's violence, and it's suicide. I mean, those are the side effects of CTE. And he exhibited all those things on the day that this happened. And I don't think that the judge has any wiggle room at all. The judge has got to allow him to be examined. And there's only a few special neurologists around the country that are dealing with this. And he needs to go to one of those specialists to be evaluated.
Well, Tad, if you were the prosecutor arguing this case and whether this testimony should be let in, what would you argue?
Well, let's be clear. I mean, a prosecutor's job is to see that justice is done, where a defense attorney's job is to zealously advocate for his client. In this case, we've got two issues. The first issue is, are we even going to examine what these doctors have to say? Are we going to listen to them? Are we going to let them evaluate Mr. Brown? And clearly, as a prosecutor, if my job is to see that justice is done, I don't really have a huge problem with an evaluation. That doesn't mean I'm signing off on the defense yet, but it means I'm willing to listen, and I want to hear what they have to say. Hey, it still seems a little far-fetched. I mean, they talk about him being depressed, being gloomy. That doesn't justify what this man did. Hey, we're all depressed. There's tons of NFL players that never had a concussion that are depressed because they're no longer in the NFL. So I'm willing to listen. I don't want to rush to judge yet. I can tell you, I'm suspect, but I'm still willing to listen.
Dwayne, here's the thing. As I understand it, this would be a groundbreaking criminal case. Nobody else has ever said, you know, that my injuries as a result of playing football in the NFL caused me to do a criminal act. But here's what I wonder. Well, if the judge lets this in, if the jury agrees with him, doesn't it still mean that he's got the propensity for violence?
Well, it would, unless he's being treated. There's three different ways that a diagnosis of CTE could help him. Number one, it could completely eliminate the criminal conduct. Number two, he could be found to have a mental defect, guilty with a mental defect, or it could be used in mitigation in his sentencing. So it's not just to completely exonerate him of the crime. And from what I understand, he's currently being treated right now, and that he's doing a lot better with his treatment.
So, Tad, do you see it that way, that it would be more about perhaps mitigating punishment?
Oh, definitely. I think that's the main place that this would come in, is in mitigation. Assuming a doctor can tie it up. I mean, we're not just going to let a guy come into court and say, hey, I played the NFL and I got a bunch of concussions, and so we need to accept that as why I did these things I did. No, that's not going to happen. I mean, we have to have a doctor come in here and literally tie it up. You know, make it make sense that, hey, it did have some kind of connection. But overall, yeah, I totally agree. The only place this is really going to, I think, it's not going to get him off the crime, but it would mitigate, you know, what he did.
And imagine, Ted, trying to pick a jury that doesn't like the Patriots or the Jets or the Lions or Notre Dame, for that matter, teams for which he played, or Michigan. He played his college ball at Michigan.
Right.
At any rate, it's an interesting case. We'll keep an eye on it. Thanks to both of you, Dwayne and Ted. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, the Reverend Billy Graham is now in stable condition after spending the night in the hospital. What doctors